by the end of it, the finale happens and everyone's singing. I'm the one that's like, yeah, wow. I mean,
Pop Culture Pastor.
Okay, here we go. It's we can ease into it. We can just come in blazing like the Flash. I don't make a very good Flash noise.
You don't.
No. Okay. Here we are. It's Pop Culture Pastor, episode number
Quattro.
It's episode 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're up to episode 4. I'm going to keep trying to remember that as we go on, just to like say it each time.
We should have a chalkboard countdown or something. I don't know.
Because I feel like we should appreciate it. Like,
yeah.
Just feels like, oh, we should totally appreciate this. Anyways, welcome. We are recording this after seeing Eternals for the first time, the day after opening night, because we're old and, we have responsibilities. And like by responsibilities, I mean, like I have sick kids.
Ew.
Yeah. Let me tell you something about sick kids. If you're not a parent and you're listening to this podcast, there's nothing worse than sick kids. There's nothing worse than being dead asleep at 3 a.m, having a kid crawl in your bed, and then half an hour later hearing bleh! Like, oh, that didn't just happen, but it did. It always did. Ain't that right, Jason?
Always does.
Jason, who is our guest today, Jason Geesaman. Jason, plug your ministry.
Okay. Yeah, I am a missionary chaplain to foster care here in the state of Kansas. And so I work with churches and organizations and communities on how they can work with kids and families in the foster care world. So that organization that my wife and I started is called Hope Fostered. And I also really love pop culture. So
Jason,
I'm excited about that.
What we've learned today is that Jason's a better person than I am.
Yes.
He's like the best.
That is not
how many
true.
How many kids do you guys have?
We have 5 kids.
That's one more than me, and God bless you.
Yep.
God bless your guys' hearts.
Yep, 3 adopted.
Mm-hmm.
All 3 of them adopted out of foster care. So we don't just do it, or talk about it. We actually live it.
So when was the last time one of them vomited? Like last week?
It's. I think it's been a little while, but.
And the worst part is when you have a certain number of kids, when the first one gets sick, you know it's just like, oh, we just entered a 4-week revolving door of sickness.
They're all about to get it. Yep.
It's almost like I described it one time as like it's like the beginning of an Outbreak movie with Morgan Freeman and Dustin Hoffman, where the first one gets sick and there's like a foreboding in the air, and you're just like, someone call Dustin Hoffman and tell him to bring one of them hazmat suits.
Yeah,
where they spray them off in the airlocked room. Yeah,
and just when you think you're safe and are past all of it, that's when mom gets sick.
Uh-huh.
And you're like, no.
Listen, that happens in my house, and just Jesus, take me now. Take me now, because I am helpless.
Yeah, nothing you could do.
I am the worst dad practically in the world. I'm a great loving dad. I love my kids, and I'm like, I'll play video games with them. But if I have to do stuff like practical stuff,
like lacking in the nurturing department, is that what we're saying?
Well, that kind of stuff, but like also around the house things that most dads are good at. That
so
never hit
are
me.
You saying Ghost Dad might have been a better dad than you?
Bill Cosby's not better than me in anything. I'll tell you that much.
Maybe in comedy, but
I didn't like that movie even before we found out Bill wasn't a very nice guy. We should just get into the pop culture stuff.
We're pulling way back.
Yeah. All right. We always start off every week with a little pop culture news. And this week I wanted to talk about Hawkeye, the next MCU series that's coming out. The first trailer came out a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the first thing that strikes you is it's very Christmassy. Very Christmassy. Well, they just came out with...
I would say very Christmassy in a diehard way. Where it obviously takes place through Christmas, and that's a big part of it. But...
Yeah. Well, they came out with another trailer yesterday, I believe. And, well, it's going to be longer by the time you guys hear this. But as we're recording yesterday, and the directors on the upcoming Disney Plus show explained how the series is not what fans typically expect. Bert and Bertie, that's the directing duo. I didn't know they were on a. I didn't know they're like
not
Cher
Tim
and Madonna.
Burton.
Yeah,
Right.
like I didn't know we were on a one name basis with them, but apparently they get one name. Bert and Bertie, the directing duo behind the upcoming Disney Plus series Hawkeye, have recently explained that the show will not feel like the typical Marvel Studios project. This is all coming from Screen Rant, by the way.
None of them have been like the same. The Marvel streaming series.
They're just saying we're different. Let's get to the part where they explain how they're different.
I
Okay.
was going to say, every series and movie that's come out this year has said, hey, we're different.
They said this: Hawkeye will see Clint Barton enjoying a Christmas vacation in New York City with his family. After he's caught up in events involving a gang, he decides to stop them. And that will lead him to cross paths with a young Kate Bishop, an archer with skills that rival Barton's. So it also stars Vera Farmiga, Froffy, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Tony Dalton, Alakwa Cox, and Florence Pugh reprising her role as Yelena Belova from the Black Widow movie. The directors also said this: they've talked about the unexpected the show that Hawkeye will be. In an interview with Game Radar Plus, they discuss how the show will feel different from other MCU projects so far. They said this, quote, quoting on the general tone of the series: "It's genuinely not what you expect from Marvel. It's an absurd Christmas story." So the word absurd in there, okay, I'm getting more excited. Just starting from that point tonally, I was tickled. What does that mean? And it's throughout the whole series. It's not what you're expecting it to be, is what they said. End quote.
So
What do you guys think? Absurd Christmas story.
it better be on the level of Home Alone absurdity. That's what I'm going with.
Is Home Alone
That-
absurd?
Okay.
Yes. Oh, yes.
What do you think of, like, not necessarily Christmas movie, but what do you consider an absurd movie? Because when I think of absurd, I think of like absurdist comedy to me is Dude, Where's My Car? Harold and Kumar is
Hudson
absurdist comedy. Hudson
Is
Hawk?
kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Okay,
Just
so
like you go in expecting action and Bruce Willis, and you're like, whoa, what in the world?
I'm
is that?
going with The Great Outdoors. Like
Okay.
John
Okay.
Candy shooting the bear with a lamp.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
Yeah, I could see The Great Outdoors being an absurdist comedy. Maybe Weird Science
Yeah.
Weird Science. Yeah.
has some absurdist qualities to it. Yeah, like and those movies, I guess. Well, what is who did those movies? 16 Candles guy, Breakfast Club.
Oh yeah, he did all those.
He did that last one you mentioned, Weird Science.
The only name I'm coming up with is Christopher Columbus, and I don't think
Every week I talk about my COVID brain.
Yeah.
Like, listen,
Also,
I used to be good at trivia. Now I cannot. My recall's terrible.
would like to point out, 4 episodes in, Home Alone has come up in 3 of them.
John Hughes.
John Hughes,
there
that
you
guy.
are.
We're working Home Alone into every podcast.
Every podcast. That's how informative it was to our entire lives.
So it's clear from the trailers alone that Hawkeye is a different type of Disney show. Holiday stuff really factoring heavily into the trailer. A lot of Christmassy music, lights, decorations. Like they make it's clear they want to play up that part of it, that it's a holiday timed show.
You know, thinking other absurd Christmas comedies, Jingle All the Way pops to mind with all the action
that was
involved.
absurd.
in
It was
that.
absurd that I ever watched it.
So,
By the
like,
way, on Disney Plus, in case you were wondering,
That kid was in a Star Wars movie. That's what occurs to me as I'm watching Jingle All the Way. And like, oh, they decided to put that kid in a Star Wars. Okay, I'm like, listen, it's in bad taste to sit here and pile on Jake. Poor Jake Lloyd.
yeah,
It wasn't Jake Lloyd's fault they cast him.
it's kind of like when Darko was drafted like number 2 in the NBA. Like, that's absurd. Like, and you can't blame Darko for being Darko, but you can blame the team. And so, yes, whoever casted him, it's not Jake's fault. It's the casting person.
I mean, we just did our best impersonation of a Ringer podcast.
We did.
We combined pop culture and sports, like, so as soon as what's his name calls, just tell him to contact my people.
Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons. Yeah, that's the
You're
guy.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. As soon as Bill Simmons calls. So an absurd Christmas show.
Doctor Who has some absurd Christmas episodes. So maybe it's like that.
Community had some absurd.
yes.
They had the claymation
Yes.
Christmas episode.
That was fun.
Yeah. So Christmas absurdity is not. It's not like a strange thing. Like a lot of people when they do the holiday theme stuff, especially Christmas, it does. Is there something about Christmas inherently that people just tend to go absurd with? I mean, I suppose for people that aren't of the faith, like to realize it always cracks me up that Christmas is like almost a universal holiday.
Yep.
Everybody celebrates Christmas. And I always wonder what like people that don't believe are making it, because like you're essentially celebrating a holiday based on God being born as a human on earth.
Well, everybody celebrates it for different reasons, which
Yeah.
might be why
Yeah.
you could do such absurd things with it.
I mean,
And-
there's even Christians out there who be like, what? We just give each other presents. That's not
Yeah.
what it's about.
Yeah.
But then you also have like the Christians that bake the Jesus birthday cake. And we celebrate Jesus.
We're those Christians. Yeah, that's us. Sorry.
Yes.
We do every Christmas Eve night. My wife does that. And I didn't grow up in church. So that one is a little absurd to me. I'm just
yeah.
like, he's not going to get this cake.
He's not.
tell you-
We're totally eating this cake.
What will be a new Christmas tradition is watching the Hawkeye series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming it's any good, but it's Marvel, so I'm assuming it's going to
Man,
be good.
Christmas Vacation also has a lot of
a lot of
absurdity.
absurdity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's partially that season where you're trying to impress your family, but then also your extended family comes in or you go to them. So there's a lot of chaos and stress. And
the Hawkeye setting of New York City, also kind of a Home Alone
Home Alone-ish.
Christmassy. Home Alone 2. I'm sure there's other
Yeah.
Christmas movies set in New
And-
York City. Miracle on 34th Street.
yeah,
Elf. Elf's another one set in New York City.
Also absurd.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of good that it's going to be an absurdist style Christmas style show, but this is what Marvel's good at too. This is what Kevin Feige does. I mean, Ant-Man was a heist movie. Guardians of the Galaxy was a space opera. Captain America: Winter Soldier was a spy thriller. Like they take these different genres and then they put a superhero story to it, and it just works.
Yeah.
So, most of the time. But I mean, sometimes, we'll talk about Eternals later, but most of the time, that was a joke. Anyways, I kind of liked Eternals, but we'll get to that later.
Spoiler alert.
I do have this thing where I firmly believe that the easiest job in the world is Kevin Feige's boss. Whoever that is, you just say yes and how much do you need?
Yeah, right?
And just let him do his thing and he's going to make you so much more
Well,
money.
until the pandemic. Because, I mean, he was making you $1 billion every movie. At least that's the direction it looked like it was heading. Then the pandemic hits, and now, boy, it's choppy waters. I
But
mean, they're
even
still
with
making
that,
tons of money.
3 of the 4 highest grossing films were Kevin Feige films since the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're just not making the level that
Yeah.
they were making. And now they're having troubles with their stars because the pandemic has sort of rewritten the rules of like where they're drawing this money from. And they're going to have to catch up the contracts with the actors to them.
Thanks a
Most-
lot, Black Widow.
Yeah,
Most of
Scarlett
those
Johansson.
difficulties that you're talking about are not within Kevin Feige's power to control.
Oh, no.
They are
They
his
were.
boss.
Yeah.
Again,
Well,
yeah,
Kevin
I guess what you
Feige-
said.
Kevin
It
Feige
used to be the easiest job.
Yeah, Kevin
until-
Feige was on record of saying they should just pay Scarlett.
Yeah.
He was clearly on her side in that whole manner, and that's eventually what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
an undisclosed amount.
it's the same thing we talked about last week in last week's pod with the IP and the creators who came up with these, like Brubaker, who created the Winter Soldier. It's like, just give them some money.
Yeah.
You guys got money coming out of your ears. Just throw them $500,000. you
Yeah.
know? I'm sure that'll make them happy. $500,000, that's pretty life changing.
It would be to me. That's for sure.
So just on a basic level, I think, we're all looking forward to Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hawkeye starts very soon. I believe the first one's out Thanksgiving. First two
Thank goodness.
episodes come out all at once on Thanksgiving. So you're going to get like that's basically an amount to like an MCU movie. That's probably going to be almost 2 hours of entertainment on a holiday.
Do we know the length of the episodes?
Well, there's only 6 episodes, so
Oh,
I'm assuming
it's
this
gonna
will be more like Falcon Winter Soldier, where they're at least 45 minutes, up to an hour.
instead of the WandaVision route.
Yeah, WandaVision's 30-minute things, which they did because
It was
it's
sitcom,
mimicking a sitcom. Yeah.
which was completely different than anything they had put out.
Completely different.
Yeah.
So
That's, we'll get to this later when we talk about Eternals. It's funny to me how people react when something's not what they expect from Marvel. We're going to talk about this with Eternals, but Eternals is getting really mixed reviews. And yeah, it was different. But yeah, I think people just don't know how to, like, we've had Marvel for how long and we still haven't figured this out. And it seems like we're just getting farther away from figuring it out, as Eternals got like the worst the worst Rotten Tomatoes, the worst critic score of any MCU movie. But we'll get to that. All right. Next thing on the agenda here. Are you guys Broadway fans at all?
Yeah.
a little bit. I've seen a few.
People
shows.
listening to the podcast are like, is he joking? Like, no. Let me tell you my pedigree here. I've only seen one show, and it wasn't on Broadway. It was in Chicago.
Oh.
My wife and I's first anniversary, I took her to Chicago. And I said, you know
what? The town or the musical?
The town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
That's how big on Broadway we are over here.
Yeah. So it was off Broadway.
Seeing Chicago in Chicago. There we go.
But it was obviously, that was like 15 years ago. But we went to Chicago, and I thought, I'll be the good husband, and I'll suck it up, and I'll get tickets to like a big musical. And the musical that was in Chicago at the time was Wicked. And so we went to see Wicked, and I'm going to tell you something. I thought, like, I'm just going to suffer through this and it'll be good because my wife will be happy. But by the end of it, the finale happens and everyone's singing. I'm the one that's like, yeah, wow. I mean, like.
So I have seen Wicked, but I saw it on Broadway.
So talented.
And they were phenomenal, by the way.
It's not like I've been to a ton of concerts. These people are, this is something else. These people are so talented. I was so blown away when I saw Wicked. I was just like, I didn't know people could sing like this.
Full disclosure, I've never seen Wicked, but I do know who stars in it.
You do?
Yeah, Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel.
Oh,
yes.
You didn't say it like John Travolta said it.
Nobody says it like I probably messed it up and didn't say it like John Travolta said it.
Yeah. He has a unique way of going with things.
Something Azim.
Which I also saw Spam-A-Lot on Broadway. The Monty Python.
Oh my goodness.
Why are you just going to New York on a whim? Who are you?
So this was actually a church trip. Like we saw two Broadway musicals on like this church international affairs seminar trip thing. And yeah, so like I got to see Kristen Chenoweth in Wicked, and then I got to see the guy from that plays Niles on Frasier in Spam-A-Lot. So
wow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my pedigree, and then like I got some lesser like off stage.
Cody's very important people.
He is. We're talking well-rounded.
I went to New York City back in
here.
2000, and all I did was get on the front row at the Dave Letterman show, which was pretty cool.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
Saw Sylvester Stallone, much shorter than you think.
Oh,
like
really?
Much shorter. Like everything you know about Sylvester Stallone's a lie. Like on the internet, he's listed at 5'10". No, dude's 5'6" at most. He's he's a hobbit.
And from his movies, he does not look very intelligent, but apparently he is super intelligent.
Wow, that was super profiling.
No, well, tell me Rocky is an intelligent man.
Okay, hold on. You ready for this? It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. You like that?
That was pretty good.
You emulated him very well.
Thank you.
For copyright purposes.
No, that was really Sylvester Stallone. He did a little clip for us. Okay, we were talking about Wicked. Boy, we're getting off track easy tonight.
Yes.
We've had a lot of Mountain Dew. Okay, so Wicked, they're making a movie of this. So this is interesting because tonight we saw the trailer for West Side Story.
Yeah,
That's
Steven
where I
Spielberg.
thhought we were going.
Yeah.
No.
I was like,
We
oh,
did
we're going
see
to talk
that.
about Steven Spielberg.
And the trailer for that looks
Musical.
wonderful. To be honest, it looked wonderful. It was well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Wicked because they're trying to adapt Wicked into a movie in the same way they did with West Side Story, Steven Spielberg. But Wicked is the largest musical of all time. This is the one. And so, man, they have this is beloved IP.
Absolutely.
And people were like, there are people that loved this casting. There are people that hated it. But they've cast for the movie, and Ariana Grande has been cast as Glinda. Yeah, right. That was the reaction a lot of people had. Ariana Grande has been cast as Glinda, and Elphaba is Cynthia Erivo.
Okay.
Both stars, Grammy-winning. They're multi-talented people in different forms of media here. Okay, so Ariana obviously has won Grammys. But she got her start on Broadway in the musical 13 and acting in shows like Victorious and Adam McKay's upcoming film Don't Look Up, which looks great, by the way.
Yeah.
Erivo is near EGOT status, says Variety. She received a Tony, Grammy, and a Daytime Emmy Award for her role as Celie in the 2015 to 2017 revival of The Color Purple.
Oh, okay.
So she's got it going on. She's got the resume.
Yeah, I had never really heard of her, but hearing the Tony, okay, so she
Yeah.
can do it.
Mhm. But people were kind of in an uproar about Ariana Grande. Listen, full disclosure, Ariana Grande is not my favorite ever since that video came out that she did of like 4 or 5 years ago of her in the donut shop where
Okay.
she licked, the guy went back and they had the fresh donuts out on the counter and she licked them. And then her and her friend laughed about it and then they didn't tell the guy. So
Yeah.
she just like licked all these donuts and I was just like, that is so rude. And she thought it was hilarious. So ever since then, I'm kind of like, I'm a little anti Ariana, but I can't speak to whether, clearly she's talented.
So, having seen her in Victorious and Salmon Cat, because I'm one of those
On Broadway.
not on Broadway. She can act and she plays fake happy really well. So
Glinda the Good Witch.
I think she's going to actually do a good job on this. It's just like a visceral reaction of, I don't know.
So Jason, since you're unfamiliar with Wicked,
Yes.
it's played as like a prequel to The Wizard of Oz.
I know the general thing.
Yeah.
I've just never.
And so
seen
Glinda
it.
in this is like Mean Girls, basically. She's kind of the bubbly, popular,
Yeah.
high school girl in this sense. In fact,
Sounds more and more like Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
one of the most famous songs from the musical is a song that Glinda sings, made popular by Kristen Chenoweth. It's called Popular.
Yes.
Popular, you're gonna be popular. Yeah,
thank you.
And she's singing this to Elphaba. She's like kind of taking her under her wing,
Yes.
and but she's green.
Yeah.
It makes it a little bit more
A
difficult.
little more difficult to be popular unless you're a Cree.
So, yes, exactly.
Everything comes back to Marvel.
I believe Kermit said it best when he said it ain't easy being green.
It's not.
The big concern I have about this is just because I have seen the side effects or the outcome, I guess, of trying to adapt Broadway to the movies with a beloved franchise known as Cats.
Oh man.
And they had every big name in Cats. Every big name, and yet look at where it ended up.
Okay.
I think on some level, there's just some stuff that's too weird.
And
They should have gone full weird had David Lynch directed. They should have just went full weird.
talk about absurdist.
Yeah.
Let's And having seen Cats live in London,
Oh,
yeah,
What is happening? You guys are artsy.
it was a high school trip.
I was going to say, I had seen Cats.
I am out of my element.
Having seen Cats live, I never understood the appeal of that, and so the fact that the movie just did not do well was no surprise.
Yes.
And then after seeing the trailers, I was like, there is no way I will ever attempt to see that movie.
So
I
I saw
have-
Cats in Kansas City, and
You
but-
saw Cats too?
yes, and literally like there's people like, oh my goodness, I can't believe how amazing the storytelling and the singing and everything. And I'm like, did we watch the same thing?
No, we did not.
I have my own story about cats too, but I got to have my butler get it out of my hot air balloon. You guys, what? Fancy pants.
I mean, just because we're from Kansas doesn't mean we've never lived or traveled.
Apparently, I'm just not as cultured as you guys. Man. I did not think this discussion was going to go here. I thought I was going to have to lead it, but I'll just turn it over to you. What other Broadways do we want to talk about here?
I mean, if you want to talk about those movies that are adapted, hey, we've all been to the movies that were like, man, this has really good actors and it's a great story. And then you go and it's like, this stinks so bad because they can't hit the notes that they have to hit. And so having legit singers leading Wicked gives me hope for Wicked.
Yeah, and Wicked, I mean, here's the thing about Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel. The notes they hit so that's what when I saw Wicked, that's what struck me is like, wow. In fact, I think the second person that plays Elphaba actually damages her vocal cords, doesn't she?
I believe
Isn't that a real thing that happened?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Well, I think I remember hearing that at some point, and I'm not surprised because doing that night in, night out, some of those notes that they're hitting. Whew.
And those two actresses are two of the most incredible voices on the entire planet.
Mm-hmm.
Like the things that they can do is just incredible.
It's what is the one where she goes way up high? Is that Defying Gravity at the very end of the, and she does the like
I think so.
Gets way. Listen, it was much higher than that. It was like breaking glass.
That sounded a little bit like Frozen 2.
Yeah.
Whatever, Azim. Okay. I think we've talked enough about Wicked. Wicked. I don't know who's directing it. Director
Spielberg.
John M. Chu, who just directed, got done directing In the Heights, which I haven't seen, but another musical.
Oh, yeah. That one. My wife and I are supposed to watch that soon on the streaming.
Just to let you know, Leah, he does not look excited when he said that. Okay, moving on. Mandalorian actor Giancarlo Esposito was at a some sort of convention this past weekend, and they posted some portions of an interview that he said some interesting things.
I saw he was trending.
Yeah, he's trending on Twitter because people hate him now. And the reason they hate him is because he said this. Giancarlo Esposito, who plays the villainous Moff Gideon on The Mandalorian, said, well, he was fielding questions from Star Wars fans at Fan Expo in Denver. So this is where he was at. And he was asked directly who his favorite person was to work with on the show. And without needing much time to think, Esposito was quick to name Gina Carano, who was unceremoniously booted off the show after she espoused some conservative political ideologies on her social media.
Mm-hmm.
But Esposito quickly said Gina Carano. He didn't get into the circumstances of her firing, but he said what it was about her that made working with her on The Mandalorian such a fun experience, even if they may not agree on politics. He said this, quote, "I say without hesitation, Gina Carano. I'm not going to weigh in on any of that other stuff, in particular, other than any of her political beliefs or what she said, whether I think it's inappropriate or appropriate or not. We as actors, probably sometimes, I know for me, I should just shut my mouth, but sometimes I can't. I've got to say what I believe because it has to go on record. I loved working with her. She's warm and beautiful and wonderful. And, you know, I don't care what her politics are. I love the fact that she came to acting late and that she was so raw and original and beautiful. I just think she's a lovely person. So I shout her out and I say she's one of my favorites." End quote.
She was also on the reboot of American Gladiators. She was one of the gladiators.
Did that already happen?
No, well, like 5 years ago or
well, they're
longer.
rebooting it again.
Oh, okay.
She's not going to be on that one.
Yeah.
I'm just going to jump out on a limb here and say that.
The reboot of the reboot.
Yes. I don't know how many times we must bring this back.
Yeah, this blew up quickly on him because Twitter, Twitter, of course, just jumped on. I mean, they piled on.
Yeah.
It was a dog pile on Giancarlo Esposito. And the politics thing, like, this is what's crazy, because this is also this week, Chris Pratt got piled on. And Chris Pratt is another likely target of like the Twitter mob, because he goes, is it Hillsong Church that he's a part of?
I
Is that
believe
the one?
so.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. And he said some things that make it clear that he's a conservative guy and thus hated. So just to say this, because it's a good comparison with Gina Carano, although Gina Carano, the stuff she said has been overtly more political than anything Chris Pratt has said.
Absolutely.
But Chris Pratt got in trouble this week because he did an Instagram post where it's his wife's birthday. And it was just this long-winded kind of gushy post. And at the end of it, he said, of all these good things you've done, you've given me this beautiful, healthy daughter. Is it? Beautiful,
Yes.
healthy daughter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And people picked out that word healthy, which okay, let me just say, they picked out that word healthy. Well, his son with Anna Faris was born with some issues. Like he's fine, but he was born premature, had a lot of like things they had to work through. And so a lot of people were saying it was a slam on his son. And I'm just like, no, I'm pretty sure that's not what he meant. That's the kind of thing you say to your wife. Like, thank you for, like, I just don't get it, because that's just literally one of those things. They're turning it into something that's like, I would say that to my wife, maybe it's like, thank you for giving us these beautiful, healthy children without even thinking.
Yeah.
Isn't that just something you say?
Yeah. Being a Chris Pratt fan from back in Parks and Rec, and having formerly been on Twitter, notice the word formerly. If there's one thing I know about him, it's how much he loves his son. It doesn't take a research expert to figure that out, because of the things he has said about his son, and his love that he has for him and the fun that he has for him. And so, yeah, for people to pile onto him as if he was disparaging his son or his ex-wife because he was praising his current wife is not. We're just finding something to be angry about because we don't like a person already.
It speaks to this larger discussion about this divide that we carry with us in all aspects now. And now it's in pop culture. When we kind of brushed up against this topic with the episode 1 woke culture in pop culture discussion. But a lot of that has to do with this, like, it's this political argument, and it's kind of invading all other parts of our culture now, where everything becomes this divide, and we're getting more and more divided. And what's kind of worrisome now is, like, I'm just afraid that because of the pandemic and our mental health, combined with this like real hatred between, like it used to be, conservatives and liberals could be friends. Like, it was back when I was a kid in the 80s, you could have people that were conservatives who'd be friends with liberals, and yeah, they didn't agree about who they were voting on, but man, nobody was like, you're a piece of trash because I'm, voting for George H. Bush and you're voting for Michael Dukakis. Like, they were like trash. No, nobody was like that. It was like, well, I wouldn't vote for Mike Dukakis, but whatever, you're my friend. Like, and now it's like, if you have different ideology, what strikes me most is, especially on Twitter, they think having a conservative worldview is evil. Like, it's evil. And I'm just like, no.
It is so weird to see how like quickly Chris Pratt kind of raised in popularity, especially like climaxing after Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, MTV's like, we're going to give him a Lifetime Acting Achievement Award at our MTV Video Award show. And like, they honored him for Parks and Rec and for a few other roles. And like, everyone loved him. Everyone loved him. And then like, he mentions he's a Christian during that acceptance speech. And then there's a few other viral clips of him talking about going to church and that sort of thing. And people are like, what?
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean to single out liberals, because conservative people are doing it too. QAnoners, whatnot. We talked about Alec Baldwin last week. There's people piling on him because he's been political on some of his social media things. He was really anti-Donald Trump. And so that thing happened a couple weeks ago. There's people piling on Alec Baldwin, making jokes out of it. It's like, people died, bro.
Yeah.
Like, are you serious?
Yeah.
You know how disgusting it is for you to pile on this guy who it's clear wasn't his fault. Like,
he had just accidentally, unmistakably, or by mistake, not his fault, took another person's life.
And
we want to pile on top of that,
right,
and make him feel worse than he already does.
And this is what concerns me. What concerns me, and you can see it playing out in our pop culture world here, is we have no empathy. No, we have no empathy to spare for anyone who sees the world differently than we do. And like, that's the crazy thing, is this idea that anyone that sees the world differently than I do because I don't have empathy, all of a sudden is an evil monster. And I'm just like, listen, Alec Baldwin and I probably aren't going to be voting for the same people on most elections, but he seems like an okay guy. Like, I think I could be around him and be okay, and, you know, maybe even be friends with him.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the things that I try to do with stuff like this is, what do the people who know them say about them? Like, Twitter we can all cast aspersions from that far away, right? When we don't know them. Well, look at when Chris Pratt was getting a lot of flack previously. Who rushed to his defense? Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo specifically, very different political views and ideology than Chris Pratt has shown, but he rushed to his defense better than anybody I've seen. Mm-hmm. Same thing with what we're talking here with Gina Carano, who rushed to her defense. You've got Esposito, right? And then now I'm blanking on the guy's name who plays the Mandalorian, who is also very
Pedro
liberal.
Pascal.
And
Pedro Pascal, super political.
Absolutely.
So like, he's even more political than Carano, just on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But they are the ones who are rushing to the defense, not because they believe in their political ideologies, but because they know who they are as people. Yeah. They know what they're actually about, and what they're actually about is not a political side. It is about character and integrity and humanity, and we lose sight of that in a social media world.
Yeah. This is where the pastor part of the show kind of sneaks in, because I feel like every once in a while this happens in our pop culture world. And I think we need more voices like this to say, hey, just because she has political thoughts, you don't know her. Yeah. Like, we think we know people just based on their politics. And that's like, listen, if you don't understand yet that politics are mostly based on the life you lead, then you're not really aware of what's going on here. There's a reason that most of the middle America is conservative, and that most of the cities and urban areas are liberal. It's because we lead like pretty much different kinds of lives.
Night and day lives.
Yeah. And here's what I have to think when I'm hearing someone who's a progressive or liberal person and they're saying something that is drawing frustration out of me, I have to literally put myself back in a place and think, I don't know what their life's like. I don't know what life's like there. That was the big thing that conservatives missed the boat on the Black Lives Matter stuff. Is like, you're pretending you understand what their life's like, but you don't. And the only way you're going to understand is if you shut up for a little while and listen. And conservatives, they were the bad guy in that, because they were just like, oh yeah, they're just tearing up stuff. It's like, yeah, but look behind that and look at the pain. Yeah. Like, there's pain there, and you're not listening. You know what I'm saying? And then liberals do the same thing to us. You know, they don't understand. I just don't understand why people would think that way. It's like, because you don't know the kind of lives we lead. We lead completely different lives. It's not like Chanute, Kansas is about as far away from New York City as you can get. It's a completely different lifestyle.
I got to go to Cody on that. Cody, how far is
Cody? You're the expert on New York City. Tell us. You know what I'm saying?
There is some differences for sure.
We need people like Giancarlo Esposito to step up, because Esposito, here's the other thing about this. He's also been someone who's been pretty outspoken politically, very liberal. And in this moment, but what we need are people to step up from both sides and say, hey, don't destroy that person, because that's not right. They're a good person. And even though I don't agree with them politically, it doesn't mean that they're bad.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to take each person on an individual case. But with like Gina, I'm kind of surprised that the left hasn't like tried to champion her, especially with Disney, with her working for a Disney company, because James Gunn got brought back for Guardians of the Galaxy. And that's a male, a white male at that. And here we have a female that is not being brought back and didn't say the same things.
Often we forget the rules when it's our people, right? You know, like both sides do that.
Yeah,
we go easy on our people.
Flies out the window all that flies out the window when you're talking politics. It used to definitely be that way of, we got to help lift up the minorities, and this is unfair because of whatever difference. But now the only difference that matters, it seems, in the culture is politics.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've run our course in the pop culture news. Let's take a break. When we come back, we saw Eternals, so you don't have to. Now, you probably want to. If you're an MCU fan, you'll probably want to. But we're going to discuss what we thought of Eternals right after this. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Welcome back.
I feel like we weren't away that long.
Is that what a break is? Okay. I took a breath.
Marvel movie number, 20-something. The Eternals, a race of immortal beings with superhuman powers who have secretly lived on Earth for thousands of years, reunite to battle the evil deviants, directed by Chloe Zhao, and story by Ryan and Kaz Firpo. Music by Ramin Djawadi, who is the Game of Thrones guy, I believe.
Yeah.
Budget of $200 million. And that's up there. It's up there. Guys, let's just give our flat, just straight reaction. We just saw the movie here about a couple hours ago. Jason, just give me your reaction. What'd you think?
Yes. See it. Yes. Is it different than most Marvel movies? Absolutely. Is it different than most Chloe Zhao movies, or what I've been told her movies are like? Yes. But no, it's a good mixture of a Chloe Zhao movie and a Marvel movie. And if you go in expecting it to be different and just planning on taking it for what it is and not what you're expecting it to be, which we as Marvel fans tend to not be able to do very well, in my opinion, then yes, it was very enjoyable. Loved the cinematography. It was a beautiful film. I love the personal reactions, and yes, I would definitely see it again, as I will, I'm sure.
Good, yeah. Cody, what'd you think?
Okay, so visually stunning, acting was pretty great. I'll give them that. Story was good. A lot in the story to process in one film, and I felt like I was watching Lord of the Rings, like director's cut.
Okay.
Like there's so much story and it's so long.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thoughts, just very simple, kind of broad thoughts are: it was epic. It was a sweeping epic. And yeah, there's so much there to process. Like, listen, on a lot of levels, if you're expecting Ant-Man, you're probably not going to like this. This is a different kind of movie, and Ant-Man is easily digestible for just about any kind of movie-going person, right?
Yeah.
This is something different. I enjoyed it. I loved it. Some of the things you've heard about it being slow in the middle, I think are true, are correct. Like it's slow in the middle, but just in the sense that there's just a lot of relationship development going on here.
Yeah, you're what you're seeing in the middle is all the Eternals' different stories unfold in front of you, and from their history to the present of kind of what they've been through and what they've done, but there's a lot of that personal. Okay, what's my life like right now from the Eternals? And when you have 10 Eternals? There's a lot of story to be seen.
So
like for me, the really interesting part was if we
wait a minute. Are we about to get into specifics?
no, well, not too specific. So
Okay.
like how Ted Lasso, like it's based around soccer, but it's not about soccer.
Yeah.
Eternals, humanity's the background.
Mhm.
Like
Yes.
it deals with humanity, but humanity is kind of like on the back burner here. It's it's just a vehicle for it.
Yeah. So let's get into I want to kind of go through the movie. So this is the part where you say, listen, if you haven't seen it yet, this is probably where you want to stop listening because we're going to spoil the nerd out of this.
Ayo.
I can already smell the spoilage.
It's
crazy.
We're going to get into some spoilers here and we're going to do it right now. So now's the time to turn back or turn it off and come back later after you've seen it. The Eternals, the movie starts with we kind of meet this group of beings who are sent to Earth 7,000 years ago, right? They're sent to an early version of Earth near I can't remember where they first dropped.
Was it
Mesopotamia.
Mesopotamia, yeah.
The
So
Fertile Crescent.
You'll notice that with the Eternals, what they're playing on here is that a lot of these characters have clearly been mistaken for gods. And so a lot of them are right out of our cultural mythologies. So Mesopotamia would be famous for Gilgamesh and Kidu. That maybe the oldest mythologies on the planet. And so Gilgamesh is a character played by Don Lee, played well, by the way. So much great acting in this movie. All these actors, there's so many of them, so they don't get a lot of time, but in the time they're given, really well acted, and I thought, and really kind of able to, with just their acting, give you an idea and flesh out who these characters are. I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, the actors in this, there's some of them I'd never seen anything they'd been in yet. I mean, some are obvious. Angelina Jolie have seen tons that she's been
Thousands
in.
of
Yeah,
things.
but seeing their struggle from being eternal, from their history, but being also trying to be part of humanity,
Right.
just incredible how they bring that juxtaposition together.
And so the first parts of the movie are just kind of introducing you to the Eternals. They're sent there by a race of space gods. I don't know how else you can put them, called the Celestials, who are essentially in the Marvel universe responsible for creation.
Yes.
They're the ones who created the Earth and created life. So the Celestials in the Marvel universe are that. And we can say that because we know it's entertainment, Christians. We just settle down. It's a story. It's fiction. It's okay. We'll be fine. We can enjoy a story. That's why we're here.
and those Celestials are the same beings that we get Ego from. We get the planet Nowhere from.
Right. We've
seen these beings in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
In Guardians of the Galaxy 1, as a matter of fact, the Collector kind of runs the Guardians through the story of the creation of the Infinity Gems and mentions this. You see the Celestials in like a kind of dream sequence as he's telling the story.
Yes.
So it's not the first time we've seen the Celestials in the MCU, but we're kind of brought up to speed that this group is a group put here by the Celestials to keep humankind safe from another group called the Deviants. Now, the Deviants are, I think, what was the main Celestial's name? Aramesh.
Or Arishem.
Arishem.
Yes, I have it.
So Arishem, in some lucky for us exposition, says that the Deviants just kind of deviated beyond their control, and they weren't really aware why. Like Arishem kind of plays it off like we don't know what happened. I think we're going to find out later that they know exactly what happened and they did it intentionally, but whatever.
So the Deviants can kind of be like, if you want to go back to faith, I would say they kind of fill that fallen angel void.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so the reason they're there at first is to wipe out the dinosaurs. Am I correct when I say that?
The life that's on the planet.
Yeah. So the
top predators.
Arishem says that the Earth was already a planet that had apex predators. And so they sent the deviants down to take care of the dinosaurs, essentially, because there's a lot of sequences where we see monsters eating dinosaurs. And then that paves the ways for humanity to come according to the Celestial. But the deviants, they say, have a problem in that they don't stop. So they start attacking humans, and the Celestial's like, well, we can't have that, so they send the Eternals.
So the apex predators that were sent to take care of the apex predators continued to be predators after the apex predators they were sent to destroy were gone.
Yeah.
Which it's
Surprised that did not work the way they expected.
and shockingly, I love the fact that one of the Eternals is teaching a class, and the topic just happens to be about apex predators.
Mm-hmm.
What a coincidence!
Yeah. So when we meet Cersei, who's one of the main characters, played by Gemma Chan, she is teaching a class and in a happy relationship with her boyfriend, Professor Dane Whitman, played by Kit Harington,
Jon Snow,
otherwise known as Jon Snow from the show Game of Thrones. But yes, Kit Harington, and Kit Harington, we find out quickly, is human. He's a human dude, and Cersei is not. She's immortal.
She would be eternal.
Yeah, she's an Eternal. So we meet them, but we understand through flashbacks that Gemma Chan's Cersei also had a relationship at one point with another Eternal, Richard Madden's Icarus. Richard Madden, also from Game of Thrones, and is it The Bodyguard? A British show called The Bodyguard. He was really good in that show. But yeah, and by the way, Richard Madden, Kit Harington, even though he's not on screen very much, is great in this movie. Gemma Chan's good. But yeah, so clearly Cersei and Icarus had this relationship. In fact, we see them get married at one point, and we see the infamous sex scene that everybody's talking about. We'll get back to that. They're in love.
they are.
Yes.
But something has happened. Something has split them up, and we find out eventually, that the Eternals took care of all the deviant problem. All the deviants are gone, and the head Eternal says, "Go live lives. Go separate and go your own ways." But for whatever reason, Icarus separates from Cersei, never to be seen by her again until the events of this movie, over the course of thousands of years.
So Cersei, doing what people do, moved on.
Yeah. And so essentially,
how does one get a divorce after being married for like 1,000 years or whatever?
So they got married in like 500 BC anyways, which marriage, unless you were a Jew, which they're clearly not, they're hanging out in Babylon.
Yeah.
So that marriage probably ain't going to be the same as what you're thinking of anyways. Yeah. Certainly not the covenant of God that we think of out of the Jewish tradition.
And not a legal marriage either, I would assume. No contract signed there.
That's not to say that also keeping a amphibious rodent for personal, that's not legal either. Anyways, that was a line from Big Lebowski.
Yes, it was.
Thank you for explaining that to us non-heathen pop culture people.
We talked about Big Lebowski last week.
We did.
We explained.
I didn't get a single part of that conversation.
Okay, so they, at some point, went their separate ways. It's not really explained at the time. But then the deviants come back. Starting with this attack on Cersei and her boyfriend, Dane Whitman, and Sprite, who is another Eternal that has been living with Cersei this whole time, who's caught like eternally a child.
Yeah.
She's roughly in her preteen years or young teen years.
So she is probably the only one that could relate to what Interview with the Vampire when they turned
Kirsten Dunst in one of her first big roles. Yeah.
Turned her into a vampire, eternally a child.
Yeah. And so they get attacked in London. Richard Madden's Icarus shows up. I'll just call him Icarus from now on. Icarus shows up, and it's weird. It's awkward because, it's your old boyfriend. And I'm like, blah, blah, blah.
But there's something that happens that they don't give any attention to whatsoever and bring it up casually later on in the movie. Like, there's an earthquake in London.
Oh, okay. This is bonkers. Okay. So it attaches to what's going on with the main plot, with what's going on with the Celestials. But yeah, just randomly there's a global earthquake that hits London, and then they go to a party.
Yeah.
They're like partying that night. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No
if
one's
there was
concerned.
an earthquake in London, people would have been freaking out because earthquakes don't happen there.
No.
Yeah, and this wasn't like a mild, like, oh, there's a slight vibration. No, like things are falling off the walls.
It was apocalyptic type earthquake covering the entire Earth.
It's a minor nitpick, but it's still a nitpick, and it's deserved. Is like, no way there's a global earthquake, and everyone's like, hey, you know what? We're still not missing that rave.
And the
tonight.
important conversation they have at the rave is whether or not they should move in with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that was weird. That whole thing that reeked of reshoots. Like something like they didn't have enough warning. There wasn't enough implication that what was happening was about to happen. Like they needed more, and so they shot the earthquake scene in later and inserted it in, and it's still fully.
I love how Kit, after asking about moving in, that sort of thing, he lets on that. I know there's something different about you. Are you a warlock? A witch? Where are you?
Oh yes,
are you like Doctor Strange?
Yeah.
No,
there's a Marvel drop there. And anyways, Icarus comes back, says we've all got to get back together. The deviants are back. We got to talk about this and go figure out what's going on. And so there is a semi reunion, but just between these characters, and they go to see Ajak, played by Salma Hayek, who's hanging out in South Dakota, living her life out there, riding horses. And oh, by the way, she's dead. They get there,
immortal, eternal person, gone,
and she's got like the weird, like they turn gray and they have like the runes on their cheek, and she's clearly gone when they arrive, and they're like, oh, okay, well, something's happening. What's going on? Now they're even more, okay, one of us is dead and we're supposed to be eternal. So now they surmise that she was killed by a deviant.
First eternal death in 7,000 years.
That's what they say. So then it's like the movie becomes, in the second act, it's the Blues Brothers. It's time to get the band back together.
Yes.
Right? And so hey, listen, as far as Hollywood tropes go, the get the band back together montage, always fun. Yeah. And it's played well here. A lot of humor, a lot of them getting, because they're like all settled into these lives, right?
This may, however, be the world's longest montage.
It really is.
Band getting back together, because it's not just a song and you see the scenes and a couple of lines here and there. It's real narrative story.
They develop.
It's usually a montage, but here it's the whole second act of the movie, and it's basically second act 2 is let's get the band back together. And we start going kind of one by one to all these other Eternals who have moved on to their lives. And we get flashbacks for some of them, of how they ended up there. So they go to Kingo, Kumail Nanjiani's character, who's wonderful. Is he just delightful?
Great.
Yes.
Every time he's on screen, you're just like, okay, I'm focusing on
this is going to be good.
Yeah, he is an Indian actor, Bollywood, right?
Yeah,
and he's famous, as you clearly surmise. He's a famous actor who's been acting for quite some time. And someone finally says, like, how do you get away with this? How do people realize you're not getting older? And he starts pointing out these older pictures of movies where he's got like a big giant mustache. It's like, that was my grandfather. Like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge,
like,
you know.
It goes clear back to like his great-great-grandfather and then works way down.
Basically, he's been doing this from the invention of film.
The biggest acting dynasty. And by the way, he plays it perfect. So there's this whole dance scene when they first get to go to see him. And even the facial acting he's doing just says like, oh, this guy. Like, he's the guy, he's like, okay, so when he's not your friend, you hate him. But when he's your friend, he's still a punk, but he's your punk.
Yeah.
Like, like, there's clearly an affection for him.
I mean, the guy travels around with a valet who carries a video camera everywhere he goes. Or, as we find out later, at least 3 video cameras.
Karun, the valet, the valet, as he calls him, by the way, steals a couple scenes.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Including when he thinks they're all about to die. and he thanks them on behalf of humanity.
Oh my
And it's like
Yeah.
one of the most emotional scenes in the movie.
Usually he steals it by the hilarity, but in that scene, it was very emotional.
Oh man, I was just
get ya.
like, in that moment, I thought, there's no one that I would rather have speak on behalf of humanity than this guy right now.
The valet.
Yeah.
So we meet Kingo. We meet Druig, played by Barry Kagan. And Druig is a younger guy, but his powers are one of mental mind control, basically. And he is he's one of the Eternals that's very much on the side of like, I'm here to protect these humans. And he's very upset in the past times that they're kind of feeding them technology. Him and a guy named Fastos, played by Brian Tyree Henry, are kind of at odds because Fastos is like the guy who's feeding humanity technological advancement.
Yes.
So in the movie, they do a great job of like it's made clear that the Eternals are kind of responsible for human advancement.
Literally, like first scene, it's like, oh, so they started the Bronze Age.
Yeah. So very first scene, right? Cersei, a poor little cave boy,
From Mesopotamia.
walks up to Cersei, and he's got his shark tooth dagger. It's an arrowhead, basically made out of a rock or whatever. It's not really a shark tooth. And she like rubs her hand over it, and it turns to like a bronze, and then hands the dagger back to the kid. So it's clearly the implication is, and there's lots of historical little Easter eggs in here that make it clear that they're responsible for human advancement.
Yes.
Thank you, Eternals.
And some of them are mad that it's going too fast. Some of them think it's going too slow. They're kind of at odds over that.
Fastos is constantly like,
Fastos is wanting to give them a steam engine at like 500 BC.
He wanted to move technology Fastos.
yeah, and he settles for a plow. All it does is plow.
So Druig kind of sparks the split, right?
Yeah.
So they defeat the last deviant on the planet, and I think they said it's around 1500 AD.
Discovery of the New World time.
Yeah, and they're at Technocliton. I can't say that. It's the capital of the Aztec Empire.
Yes.
And there's just mass chaos going on. And what you figure out is in the backdrop of this fight with the last Eternal or Deviant, the Spaniards are attacking the Aztecs, and so they've got their metal, weird looking helmets, and they're shooting their guns, and it creates this whole speech. And this is the part that I rolled my eyes a little bit. The Spaniards and like Druig goes off on his big speech. It's like, you're giving them too much technology. This is called genocide. And I'm just like, yeah, the Aztecs sacrificed women and children. Let's not get carried away, right? Let's not pretend the Aztecs were,
Maybe could have chosen a different group of people to.
It's so over the top. Like, essentially, what we've done. Let's just take a side note here. Let's take a side course here. I'm going to tell you what annoys me about this. Essentially, and we're trying to do this with all of history too. Essentially, what we have done is we've decided that the way we used to do pop culture, cowboys and Indians, was gross and not true and unjust, which was true. Savage Indians in our old Westerns, and that's the way they always were, was wrong. That was stupid, and that was not historical, and it kind of sucked. Now we've just switched it the other way.
Yes.
Yeah. So all European white people are evil, and the natives are always good. It's just like there's no nuance.
There has to be a bad guy and a good guy. Yeah. They can't both have lived different lives and we can't have their own flaws.
We can't go from the real place of humans are all broken and flawed, right? We're all guilty of atrocities. We're all sinners. I think I've heard that somewhere.
Ajax kind of gets it.
Right. Now, they're not all where Druig's at.
Where she's like, we gotta let them make their own choices. There's free will here, and for them to do good and to do bad, we're not to interfere. Yeah.
Druig does. He takes over the minds of everyone fighting the Spaniards and the Aztecs, leads them out of this the Aztec capital, and that's where he parts. And then Ajax kind of directs the rest of the Eternals. Hey, we just defeated the last deviant. Go live your lives. That's where they split up.
Because Eternals only are supposed to battle deviants. That's all they do.
Right.
If there are no more deviants, what do we do now?
So then we learn some things about Ajax. And this is the part of the movie where, so we don't even have a full reunion yet. And then we get kind of in on these plans of like Ajax was the real role of the Eternals, right? Which is that the real role of Earth is to serve as a, basically a incubator.
Yes.
For another new celestial who will go on and create millions of new universes and planets and life, right? And they're supposed to look at that as honorable, but some of the Eternals have problems with that. As you might have guessed, they've fallen in love with the people of Earth, and they think, oh, there's something different about Earth. And even Ajax herself says, there's something different about this. I've served the Celestials for millions of years, and now I have a problem with this. She says, we got to figure out a way to stop it. Then that's when we find out that Icarus not on board, and he kills Ajax, right? Spoiler. But we already warned you about spoilers.
Yeah, so many spoilers coming up.
So at this point, they're trying to get the rest of the band back together. They end up they go to Phastos, who, okay, and this is where we get to the next segment of our discussion. So Phastos is a gay man, a gay Eternal in this case, and he's married to a man, and they have a family, and they have the white picket fence and the perfect life from the outside, no flaws. We've talked about this before. But let's just talk about this because it's been making headlines this past week, and the wokeness of this movie has been a talking point. So I want to get to this. We can take a time out right here and kind of talk about the wokeness. Let's start with the gay family of Phastos. Phastos being a gay man. And personally, I didn't find it all that distracting. Like, they just needed, what they needed for the story was they needed to show that this particular Eternal had a family that he dearly loved. He had made a life for himself, and that was important enough for him to be like, we got to save the Earth. And they did a good job of that. By the end of the scene, I believe he loves his husband, and I believe he loves his kid who they've adopted. Okay. So like, could they have made his character hetero? Did it serve any purpose to make him gay? No, it didn't. But I wouldn't go full on say it's pandering either, because it really is not essential to the story, but there was nothing about it that was in your face. And so all the big news this week was how Saudi Arabia and all these countries that were being gay is like punishable by death. Like, they all weren't going to allow the movie in there because Marvel wouldn't cut it. And like, that shouldn't have been a surprise. And I don't think that was an accident. I think that Marvel or Disney themselves put out that story to try and drive up, talk about it, because the movie was getting less than stellar reviews. And so they're trying to put out this kind of narrative that it's because of the wokeness. But in this case, being a conservative person, this didn't really bother me at all and wasn't distracting to me.
Yeah, I think maybe if it was like the whole second act was just about him and his family, maybe you've got that. But as you're walking through each of the Eternals' current life, they all have reasons to choose whatever they're choosing, right? Whether they're wanting to stop what the Celestials are wanting to do, or whether they're wanting to fight for the Celestials and what their purpose originally was. And for each of them, they have to have this character journey within themselves that is based upon who or what they have fallen in love with. Yep. And for some of them, that's always going to be the Celestials and that purpose that they were given. For some of them, it's humankind or humanity. And for some of them, it's very specific people. And for Phastos, it was his husband and his son. And so as far as that goes, yeah, I didn't feel like there was any like pandering as you were saying. And I did feel like the family aspect of it, who he was fighting for, was very important.
Yeah. And I will say, on the pandering subject, the only problem I have with it at all, I spelled out pretty well in the first episode, was, again, he's the most perfect character. He has the least flaws. He's loving. He's sensitive. Like, he's got the white. I mean, even I laughed.
His biggest flaw is he can't advance technology fast enough.
Yeah. I audibly laughed when they showed him his home and it had the white picket fence. I audibly laughed because it was just like, well, of course. That's like the American symbol of goodness, right? You've got the white picket fence. And so that's the only part for me is, again, it's not true representation. You're not showing me an actual human being. You're showing me a human being who you're afraid to have any flaws because you're trying to pander. But anyways,
so like
it wasn't distracting
for me. It wasn't a deal at all. Like, it showed that he had values with the person that he had settled down with. Although he might be the celestial that causes the most pain for humanity because of his invention.
Well, okay, yeah. So
I'm flash forwarding a bit, so I'm not going to go on much further than that.
Well, we can talk about that because there is a scene back. It takes place in Hiroshima.
Yeah.
After the nuclear bomb is dropped, and this is the point where he loses his faith in humanity. He's upset because he is directly led to this awful dropping of the nuclear bomb, even though the fire bombings in Tokyo killed way more people. But I digress. It's not, right. It wouldn't be a woke moment if we didn't, say the nuclear technology was bad, and that's fine. My same thought went through my head was like, well, gee, Fastos, where you asleep for the last 6 months previous, where people were just dying because they were being burned to death by napalm. Maybe not, but I know we're telling a story here, so I'll let it go.
Well, the difference is we all know about Hiroshima.
Yeah.
And what
right. Yeah, it's what we know, but I also pick up a history book. There were way worse things. Anyways, I don't want to get into a discussion of what's worse. I'm just like, when we single out Hiroshima as this truly awful, murderous event, and you just pretend that you have no idea that the Tokyo fire bombings were a thing, then you've missed part of the story. And if you're going to talk about nuclear bombs and how terrible they are, you better talk about all war, all of it, because people died, civilians died in a lot of that World War II. It's like we're switching the narrative all the way to the other side where we're the bad guys, and you know what I'm saying? Like, anyways, it's more of the same.
There's enough bad to go around.
Yeah, it lacks nuance.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, they do a good job with Fastos, his character, of setting him up. We also meet Makari, the speedster, who has just been living in the ship underground in old Babylon, Iraq, present day Iraq, eating Twinkies.
I was going to say, eating Twinkies,
collecting artifacts.
Chips.
Yeah.
She's the Indiana Jones of the Eternals.
She's just been hanging out back there. And then it leads into specifically Act 3 of the movie, where all the truth comes out. It's clear Icarus wants to keep following the celestial orders, and the Eternals, all kind of what's left of them, all kind of band together because a couple of them die, and what's left of them band together to try and stop the new celestial from being born and destroying planet Earth.
Oh, and we also learn about how the deviants came back, and it was because of global warming.
No.
I mean, you could stretch it that far.
It seems like they're going to go that route, but then right at the last minute, he says it was the coming convergence.
Yes.
From the core of the planet that was getting warmer and melting the ice. But yeah,
they say glaciers melting at first, and then
But the glaciers melt not because of us, but because of the emergence of the celestial.
I think we were all in mid-eye roll by the time they got around to saying that last part.
Yes.
Like, well, that was probably, it was almost like the actor hated to do it. It's like, well, it was probably from the convergence and the core heating up, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, there's almost a scene in there where they're leading you to believe that it's going to be global warming, climate change. And then at the last minute, they tell you it was probably the Convergence.
I didn't realize that Marvel can like mention DC superheroes.
Yeah, well, okay, let's get to that, but let's finish up the woke discussion first.
Okay, because that was
Yeah, I know you want to get there, but we need to finish this discussion before we move on. Is it too woke? Because I'm going to say no. I didn't. Aside from the global warming thing, which they then said wasn't because of climate change, the gay depicting the gay family, like it wasn't super distracting, other than a kiss, which was not super gratuitous at all. Like there just wasn't much there that I wonder why people are so offended by this, unless really there's not that many people offended, and the movie company themselves have kind of put out the headlines to try and drum up whatever.
So I would say that at worst you could say there's a slight slant of politicalness.
But it's not bad.
I would say that it really wasn't much further past than the Avengers Endgame, where they talked about like, I lost my husband, my partner in the blip, and it's like, okay, that really had nothing.
To me, you're seeing real people in real lives, and so I thought it was, aside from he clearly has no flaws.
Has Marvel been more woke and more pandering? Absolutely.
Yes,
this was not even.
In fact,
the extreme.
I'm going to tell you that the thing I had the most problem with was the hetero sex scene. Let's get into this for a second, because in another first for Marvel movies, we have a full-on PG-13. And by PG-13, I mean you get that camera angle where you're just over the guy's shoulder blade. But there's clear, subtle thrusting.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. And I'll leave it at that.
I mean, I don't think there is a better word.
And the whole time I'm sitting there watching that, I'm just like, now why? What, is it necessary?
Yeah.
To say
you got the same point at the end of the cut before that.
The most
they're in love.
Yeah, the most unnecessary scene in the whole thing was that scene, and even then, you could have shown them in bed together, where we could have figured out what had happened, that they were intimate. Like there was no reason to show that, no reason whatsoever in a movie about superheroes that kids are probably gonna see, like. Yeah. And I know some people, there are varying degrees of people that have problems with it, people that don't have problems with it. I'm just saying, but why? Why was it necessary? Like, look, my wife asked me earlier before we saw the movies, like, was this a thing in comic books, sex? And I was like, no. We knew Peter liked Mary Jane, and we thought about it as teenage boys. Oh, they must be, But it was never a part of the comic book stories because it wasn't necessary. You didn't need to go there. So I'm kind of the same way. Like, yeah, we get it. Icarus and Circe were in love. They do the things that people in love do, humans in love do. And
humanoids
in this case. And so it was just highly unnecessary. I don't know what you guys think, but I was bothered. That was the most bothersome thing in the movie to me. Like, that has nothing to do with wokeness. That's just like, dude, come on.
Like, I since they didn't really show anything, I mean, there was
thrusting.
It was unnecessary.
We need to put a poll up on the Facebook page.
Quite frankly, I had more of a problem with Sprite calling Icarus Circe's ex-boyfriend when they had obviously been married already.
Yeah, they were married.
That I did.
And what looked like a very quaint Indian ceremony.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, literally, I feel they could have either cut the Hindu marriage ceremony, or they could have cut the sex scene. Either way, like, because both show you they're committed. I mean, so however, whatever. I mean, you didn't need both.
Bottom line, that was the most problematic thing in the movie. And as far as wokeness goes, there's not a show on television where you're not going to be hit with that level of what you would call wokeness, I guess, because to me, it wasn't distracting at all, and whatever. It had no effect on me whatsoever. I'm totally fine as a Christian after watching it. it makes me wonder is like, who's doing the review bombing? Who is it really? Because I just don't believe that Disney's not behind some of it because the reviews were not so great. But anyways, because I can't imagine someone watching that and going, oh, I am so deeply offended. I just don't.
Well, I can imagine someone doing that.
Yeah,
We were
but
just
not
talking
many.
about stuff
Not
like that
many
earlier.
people, right?
But yeah,
It was so benign.
Yeah.
So benign.
I mean, if you're going to like bash the movie, then I assume that the movie, this wasn't your like type of movie. Like literally, comic book movies. This kind of fits the general theme. Like, so if you don't like comic book movies, I'm sure that you'll go to it and hate it. If you like comic book movies, you might think this was different and this was kind of long. And then you might be like, this sets up the next chapter.
And so they do reference, as we're moving on, they did reference DC superheroes.
They did.
Superman
Yes.
is
Soups.
referenced.
Which is not the first time in a Marvel movie they have referenced Superman. If you remember back to Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 1 in Aunt May's hospital room, she looks at him and says, Peter, sorry, who do you think you are, Superman?
And of course, Deadpool.
I know that because I watched that
references,
movie with my daughter yesterday.
Nice.
Green Lantern. Deadpool does, but
Yeah.
that's because Ryan Reynolds is
But
making
that's
fun of
Deadpool.
himself.
Yeah. Right. So that's fun. And it proves that Superman exists. And it kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge says, is Marvel giving you a little joke that maybe Superman is based on Icarus sightings and old stories and myths of Icarus.
So I'm not going to lie. Icarus reminds me a lot of Homelander from The Boys.
Okay.
Amazon Prime superhero show. Demeanor, abilities. Having not read the Eternals comic books, I can't tell you if he had the same abilities in those that he had in the movie, but even his costume or outfit, like, it was very Homelander-esque.
Yeah. Icarus becomes the main protagonist by the end of the movie. He's
so
the
is
guy.
Homelander.
He's the guy fighting against
Spoiler.
the Eternals to bring the Eternal out to do, or the Celestial out to do what the Celestial's supposed to do. And at the end of the movie, he realizes the error of his ways and is so distraught he kamikazes himself into the sun. Spoilers.
Which, I mean, kind of goes with the mythology of Icarus, but at the same time, like, why did he need to commit suicide?
Well, because then it frees up Cersei to carry on her relationship without awkwardness with Dane Whitman.
He could have like done what what's her name did, Captain Marvel, and just gone flying off to a different galaxy, doing whatever you do as someone with abilities.
So because this is Marvel, and because we know that no death is eternal, if Superman is based upon Icarus in this Marvel world, and where does Superman get his power from?
The sun.
The sun. Icarus flying into the sun makes it. No, I don't think that's
he's
a thing. But I mean,
someone asked me after the movie, "You think Icarus is really dead?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think he is. I don't think they have any intention of bringing him back." It kind of leads us into our last question: are you interested in a continuing story here? And honestly, I'm semi-interested. I'm more interested in particular characters rather than. I don't think there'll be a sequel to this.
No,
I don't think you're going to see an Eternal sequel. I think what you're going to see is that some of these characters, the plan all along was to introduce them in this course of this movie and then move them on to other things. In particular, Kit Harington's Dane Whitman character, who in a post-credits scene we find out is in the lineage of King Arthur and has the ebony blade Excalibur.
Yeah.
And some weird things happen where Mahershala Ali's blade actually does a voiceover at the end, and off camera. Do you think you're ready for this, Mr. Whitman? And so Blade makes an appearance in the last post-credit scene as Kit Harington's character of Dane Whitman is wanting to pick up the blade, which he's like having to work up to. He seems afraid to do it.
I could see like Cersei coming back and being relevant for that storyline.
Yeah. So in the comics, Cersei and the Black Knight, who is Dane Whitman, Kit Harington's character, who he becomes, they're both Avengers.
And they're both in the comic book I just bought. Anyway,
congrats. Cody went to a thrift store today and bought some mid-90s comics.
I did.
I told him like those are garbage.
Those are, but very relevant to what we're talking about now. But within that very comic book, there's mention of other Eternals and Angelina Jolie and her crew of Eternals that don't stay on Earth. They fly off in their spaceship and they're going to seek out other Eternals.
Yes, so their mission is to go alert other Eternals of the Celestials' nefarious. And they're not really nefarious. They're very Thanos-like in that like they're going to continue the cycle of life by killing, destroying a planet full of people to make more life, right? So they're very like, it's very like matter of fact. They just don't have a conscience at all. But they're going to go warn other Eternals. And in the first mid-credits bonus scene, they meet, speaking of Thanos' brother, Star Fox / Eros, played by Harry Styles, and also Pip the Troll.
Pip the Troll, played by Patton Oswalt, because Marvel has to find a role that Patton Oswalt can play forever.
Oh my goodness. And
he's been like 5 different characters in Marvel stuff.
By the way, just going to come out and say it, boy, the CGI on Pip the Troll, that was struggling a little bit.
A little bit.
And they needed to spend a little more time on that one. That
Spoilers.
It wasn't Luke Skywalker worthy in
Mandalorian. So yeah, I think that they could do something that sets up like a big intergalactic battle much further down the line with the seeking out of other Eternals.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if we're going to see an Eternal sequel, but we're obviously going to see the characters that made it in the future.
Yeah, are you here for more of that story?
And the Eternals, and yes, I'm here for that, as well as let's get a Black Knight movie now. Let's do it.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say. They're clearly setting up the two characters that clearly they're making a future for, making room for, are Cersei and Kit Harington's Dane Whitman / the Black Knight, which is who he becomes, although he doesn't become him in this movie. They deal with it in a post-credit scene. It's clear that you're going to see more of them, and I'm excited for that. I thought Kit Harington was one of the more interesting people in the movie, and he's barely in it.
He's barely in it.
Literally, you blink your eyes a few times, and he's gone.
And then you throw in that in-credit scene, and like I'm in on his character. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. I think that they have set up the next chapter of Marvel movies quite well.
Well, they're setting up there, and so like the sword starts like talking to him. It's like speaking in tongues. It's like whispering. It's like whispering to him. And with Blade being the one who talks to him at the end, it's clear they're setting him up to go into this route of what they've been setting up this whole phase 4 so far with the Darkhold and Wanda. You had a lot of this like the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, and What If. Just a lot of these. They're coming out with the Moon Knight character here in a Marvel Disney Plus show that's going to have Werewolf by Night in it. Like they're setting up like this Midnight Suns style, which Midnight Suns was a run of comics in the early 90s that had your more, I don't want to say occult, but supernatural magic. What's the word I'm looking for?
I think supernatural.
Is the supernatural.
Right word. Yeah,
occult. Really, I mean, I know we don't like to say that word as Christians, but your Doctor Strange, your Ghost Riders, your Blades, Morbius was a preview we saw before this, who is literally a vampire. They're going into this route, and I think that's where they're taking Dane Whitman. Cersei, I think, is going the Avengers route.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely setting up both galactic type storylines and supernatural storylines at the same time. And I'm just here to see where it all heads.
Yeah, the Harry Styles Star Fox mid-credit scene was awesome too. And I'm hoping that wasn't just a gimmick. I would love to see more Star Fox because he's a very interesting character. Brother of Thanos, also an Eternal, and a Titan from the moon of Titan, where same place Thanos comes from, and except he's normal looking. So the idea is that Thanos has a like deviant mutant gene. So there's first of all, mutant should like ring out in your ears because Marvel's going to start planting these seeds of how the X-Men are going to come about. So there's things to do with the deviants in this movie they're playing on some mutated stuff, mutated genes, blah, blah, blah. But Harry Styles shows up, Star Fox, and Pip the Troll. And so that was fun. Expect to see more of him. Anything else you want to say this movie before we like give it a final rating?
Okay, so I got a few things.
Okay.
So watching this movie,
lightning round.
It seemed a lot like every episode of Ancient Aliens. That like, oh, we got this advanced technology from who? Aliens. How did this global catastrophe happen? Aliens. How did dinosaurs get wiped out? Aliens. Yeah. I mean, like, literally, I think the people that started the Ancient Alien show must have read the comics, or the comics must have watched Ancient Aliens. I don't know. Like I said, Homelander is Icarus by far. The rings that Phastos has, like the way he makes things, looks a lot like Shang-Chi.
Yeah, so the technology Phastos is messing around with looks suspiciously like the Shang-Chi rings of the Mandarin.
Yes, and that those are as old as time.
Can't imagine that there's no connection whatsoever there.
And then I would go back, the pastor in me, like when they are talking with the Celestial, and he talks about creating the Deviants and then creating the Eternals. He kind of has like a deist approach that within theology circles, it's the watchmaker syndrome, that God just made everything set in motion and then is just observing it from a distance. Yeah. And so like that's the Celestial mindset, and where the Eternals come in, they bring about free will, especially with the way that they stopped the catastrophe that would have ruined all of life on Earth.
So much faith stuff in here. In fact, one of the characters literally utters the phrase, "The truth will set you free." At some point, it's like, okay, there we are. What'd you think?
Yeah, I was going to talk about
things?
that faith. There's definite correlations between creator, creation, free will, what we're created for, how we come about following that purpose and that creation. But even more specifically, you have betrayers to the faith, and you have those who follow it blindly, and because they follow it blindly, cause pain to the very ones they're supposed to be helping and protecting. Mm-hmm. And I had one line that really struck me as a believer, and it was when Kamal Nanjiani's character is having to decide is he gonna stay and stop the Celestials, or is he going to leave? And he tells the other Eternals, I believe in what the Celestials created us to do.
Yeah, see, he was saying he agreed with Icarus.
Yes, but the difference between him and Icarus, as he said it, was he was not willing to hurt those that he loved for his beliefs. Mm. And I thought that was just a powerful thing, especially as a Christian, because a lot of times, whether justified or not, we get portrayed, and a lot of times, sometimes it is justified, as we will do whatever it does to stick by our beliefs, whether it hurts you or not, hurting you is not our main priority. It's following our faith. And I just don't see where Christ set that as an example for us, that we are to love others because of our faith, that we are not to hurt them. We are to help them as best we can.
Yeah, don't cause them to stumble.
Yes.
Also, quite frequently within the current times, we're seeing Christians try to force their beliefs onto others. It doesn't say that in the Bible. It just says hey, be ready to give an account when you're asked, and be ready to love and to love people that are created in God's own image. And I think that line in particular definitely speaks towards that aspect of faith quite a bit.
This movie, at the end of the day, about love, about loving people and the relationships that you have, and just how the base is one of the running themes of the whole movie is that the Eternals have fallen in love with humanity and all the rough stuff. It's not just all hunky dory. Some of them have real issues with humanity, but at the end of the day, they're all willing to fight for humanity because they love them.
Yeah.
Reminds me of someone else I know.
Yes. Turns out there's not many different kinds of stories we tell, but the greatest story ever told, versions of it. All right, Cody, out of 10 nachos, how many nachos does the Eternals get?
I'll go 8.
8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Man, quality.
Well, I don't
Jason.
want to sound like I'm copying, but that was the number that popped into my head.
Okay.
Was
8.
A B minus.
7.5 to 8. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going B minus if we're going letter grade.
I'm going to go 7 out of 10 nachos. I'm going to go 7 out of 10. I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was good. Did it get a little slow in the middle? Yeah. Are some people not going to like it because of that? Yeah. But I kind of dig relationship building. I kind of like the idea of the characters, seeing them, how their relationships work. And I know that sometimes that can be a little slow for people. It's kind of the reason I enjoyed Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
Was there's just a lot of relationship building going on in that show and in that
And that's
narrative.
all you're saying about Midnight Mass.
Yeah,
I'm
we're not going to spoil
watching it because you guys.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it.
I think that the post-credit scenes gave it that little extra bump up from 7 nachos to 8 nachos for me.
Yes.
So.
Very intriguing post-credit scenes. So stay for those for sure. Hey, we've gone way too long again.
Spoilers.
But if you've listened this long, then you must really like listening to us talk about movies and such and pop culture. And we appreciate that. Until next week, this has been Pop Culture Pastor. Thanks, Jason, for stopping by.
Absolutely. Loved it.